Okay. That.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you fine, Kit. I wanted to now introduce you all to Kit Galloway, and that video you just saw was one of his videos, Hole in Space. So, Kit, tell us a little bit about Hole in Space.
Well,
keep your animals at bay, please.
Yeah, we're on a horse ranch out here, and Ed's all excited too. Wait a minute.
Introduce us to your friend.
Yeah, this is Ed. I'm out here in the high desert Mojave. Edwards Air Force Base is just out here, and Atomic Avionics doing weapons-grade drones, and we have to pick up our mail at the mail post office, and there are people there that are, they are just way out of town.
So you're way out in the desert, aren't you?
Yeah, it's a good thing, though.
Must be pretty hot out there, huh?
It gets hot, but it'll snow. We're at 4,800 feet, so we're on the back slope of the San Bernardino Mountains, looking out on this pool table that just goes on out there, where the salt flats and stuff are.
So tell us a little bit about Hole in Space and how it all started.
Well, what I'm going to do here is hopefully switch to screen view, and let's see how that works. So I will say start. Now I have no idea what I'm sending. What are you seeing?
We see your screen.
You see Sherrie and I, a photo?
Yes, you and Shelly.
Okay, that does. Okay. So we're going to go through this. You asked about Hole in Space, but I want to go back to, I want to start a little bit earlier. And because we did a project, Sherrie and I got together in Paris in 1975. And in the beginnings, she was with a video group called Optic Nerve. But she did some early hacking before she got to Berkeley and going to the university there and starting this video group. She was at SDS and there were in Boston, and her father sent her out west to Riverside. And at Riverside, they had turned a place called the what was it? It was a big hotel that went bankrupt, and so they made it a co-ed dormitory. And Sherrie, and instead of going to classes at Riverside, they started an alternative university and brought people in from all over the country. And I want to get a picture, try to get a picture of this. It doesn't matter much. Anyway, so people came in from Berkeley and the free speech movement, and Michael Rossman and people like that people in Berkeley know, and in the Silicon Valley, I think, and Lee Felsenstein certainly, because he was his mentor. And so Sherrie moves up to Berkeley, and she starts with this video group, and she starts living at a commune that Michael Rossman established. Back in those days, and he was one of the leaders of the free speech movement. And she actually was in a warehouse. She made a video of a person by the name of Pam Hart. And Pam was the one who got the mainframe from Bank of America that Lee Felsenstein later discovered. And he turned that into community memory. Here's a picture of Lee with that machine.
Right.
So Sherrie was there at a place called Project One and Resource One when all of that started. Before Lee got that machine booted up, and they released a phone line and ran it to the Berkeley Music Store and created the first terminal. And wrote this story about in the Berkeley Barb. in 73 about community memory. And all that good
I just
stuff.
want to mention that if anyone wants to listen to Lee's stories, we have the recordings from last year, from one hour, Lee speaking about Homebrew Computer Club and community memory. So you find the recording on our page.
So while Sherrie was doing that, I was in Amsterdam. Oh, and my, life is a hack. So my first hack was when I got drafted in 1968, and I was being thrown into the Army during the Tet Offensive in the beginning of that year. Well, I found myself in the Army, and what I did was I found out the name of the clerk who actually wrote your orders after you did your basic training, and he needed a hi-fi system, and I got orders for Germany. Ta-da! So I got to Germany in 1968 at a place called Schweinfurt. But later I showed up in Amsterdam, and there's a place there now and then called the Milky Way. And a group of us doing video and stuff, we were commissioned to do a project for the 1972 Olympics along the banks of this lake here. And we had a geodesic dome. You can see some of the screens in the lower right. We had a geodesic dome with an Ida 4 projector that would project video the size of a drive-in movie theater that Hitler actually used in the 39 Olympics, made by the Swiss, Freytag. And 3 films running in sync, 22 carousel slide projectors driven by a computer punch tape, and all of this, and 35 actors, and original music, and all of this was being beamed out of a smoke-filled geodesic dome.
This was at the Munich Olympics, right? 72?
Yeah, that's right, 72. That turned out to be a real bad scene, as you might recall.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And we were in a kind of a place like this. And so all the artists in the Spielstrasse then, they packed up their bags and left town. And everyone was very upset at how everything turned out there, of course. Here's the actors in the group. We're all lighting up down there. The Olympic Committee decided to go out into the sort of freakier side of culture rather than your normal ballets and stuff like that. So we got sucked up in this whole thing. The Germans were so confused when I went there to get paid, they paid me twice. So we took the money and went home. So that, let's see, what else could we say here? So, oh yeah, this is me in front of the Milky Way, but this is our group, the video heads, in Amsterdam. This was taken in 72, but we did the Olympics and all that stuff. We eventually moved to Paris and got our hands on the Sony showroom on the Champs-Élysées, which was a big display window and a great venue. And we were doing interactive windows so that people could break light beams and stuff and operate the video equipment. And someone sent us how am I doing on time?
Oh, you got all the time in the world. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay.
Well, not really all the time in the world, but I'm sure
Right.
you're doing fine.
Okay. Also, I wanted to say that so this big display window in the Champs-Élysées on Paris became our venue, and we would work with all kinds of material. But we got someone sent us a tape of James Brown, and we put it up on the video wall and went home that night and just let it run and rerun in the window. And the next day, the Champs-Élysées was totally blocked up by young black men from all over the world living in Paris who hadn't seen James Brown before. And we had to, it took several days and the police to help close all of that down. So while Sherrie and I were in Paris, we got word that NASA was accepting proposals to to use a satellite. And so we booked passage on a Russian liner called the Mikhail Lermontov, and crossed the North Atlantic in storms in 1976. And this boat actually sank a few years later, and we almost sank too. And it was like they took the stabilizers off to make better time, but it was still an 8-day ride in like a washing machine. But we got to New York and set up camp there, and we went down to Washington, D.C., and got NASA. We found the guy, again, this is like life's hacks. We found the guy that was running the program, and this was a NASA experimental communications satellite. It was so powerful it would knock birds out of the sky. You could make a satellite dish out of chicken wire. And they would beam this into India and the Eskimos, Inuits in northern Canada to tell them how to, grow corn, get medical care and stuff like that. So, so we got access to a satellite and ran and moved back out to Berkeley and Michael Rossman's house. And by the way, this was before the holodeck on Star Trek, the idea, or at least the popularization of the idea of virtual reality and virtual places and stuff like that. People weren't talking about that. So we had a satellite, and so what we had done, let's see if I can do this. Let me try to put a picture up. Let me just put this picture up. So when we were in Paris, I had been setting up video art shows, and we'd all been doing video and theater and stuff like that in our separate worlds. And when we got together, we said, we're sort of done with this video stuff because you can't get your stuff on TV, and, and certainly it was a revolution. But we had looked together, we just sort of realized that we might be the indigenous people of multimedia cyberspace, because we were saying, what the hell is taking so long? Because we were imagining a world in a broadband, telecollaborative, immersive image space kind of world, that we're still waiting for, quite frankly. And so we were kind of like, we just said, well, computer rendering in real time is too slow. Video art is stuck on being on TV or making art to show on TV. And we're not, we were thinking back to our early days of what we imagined television was going to be like, and computers and all this kind of stuff in science fiction. And we realized that we were going to create a new practice that looked at these new possible ways of being in the world. However, we were not going to be able to do it because the technology didn't exist, so we would have to approximate it with inadequate technology like satellites, which allows you to get live images across oceans. You can't get a microwave network to do that every 25-mile hop and stuff like that. So we wanted to reveal this concept of the immersive place. So all the satellite and video links are all divided by a wall. Like when Reagan said in Berlin, Gorbachev, tear down this wall. We wanted to tear this wall down, motherfucker. And so we we did rehearsals, and also there's satellite propagation time too. When you've got a satellite 22,000 miles in a synchronous orbit, which looks like it's in the same spot in the sky. It takes an eighth of a second to get up and an eighth to get down. So we created this place where people emerged, and there was even facial recognition. So we saw an image place, or virtual reality, which could bring in reality, lens-captured reality. You could recognize people if they wanted to be recognized, and they could perform and do things and be in the world that way. And so that's where we started 10 years before that guy Fisher started the VR lab at the Ames Research Center in the Silicon Valley. So So we started early by jumping ahead of the existing technology. I should show you, I go here, actually I'll go back here a little, I'll go back here. And so we were doing different kinds of imaging things and putting people in live football games being broadcast out of Stanford. And so we had all of these scenarios and plannings.
Were this combined images?
Yeah, it was like basically a mix, which if you go back and in early television, before videotape was introduced in 1957, all television was live. There was people like Ernie Kovacs and stuff that would do this stuff, or Steve Allen would luminance key himself out on the street, sit on people's shoulders and mess with people and do stuff like that. It's basically a very simple technology. And what we kept saying is what's taking so long, because a lot of this stuff that we saw that could be done for the last 50 years had been done. And there was a lifetime of work just catching up on stuff.
Yeah.
So this was the first of a series of projects. That's Sherrie in the control room outside of the Ames Research Center. And so that's like that. There's a thing here I want to show you in the video section.
But let's move over to Hole in Space, because we are time limited on our speech time here.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've got about 12 minutes left before we bring in our next
take,
speaker.
Yeah, I can take questions on that, and but there's just something that just give me what is that? Come on, puppy. Yeah, here. Just give me a second. Satellite art. So. All right, we're going to blow this up. So let's just go forward. So we had to do a lot of research about this propagation delay problem. And well, take a look at this, and it gives you an idea. This is the time it takes to go through a satellite and link live video from one end of the country to the other end and have it returned to you.
So this is a video link. In 19...
Yeah, this is the Ames Research Center.
Was that you?
1977. Now he's going to throw a switch, and that guy's at now watch. Now this barbershop mirror effect is the delay.
Yes. And when was this? Which year is this?
77.
Wow.
But,
Wow.
so now here is a test of trying to synchronize ourselves, but in fact,
This is you, right?
yeah, that's me on the right, and the guy is the head of the program at NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C. Now watch, we're trying to sync up. So when we sync up, we're actually out of sync.
Yes.
Hold on.
That's amazing.
These are all the studies that we did.
But move on to Hole in Space, please. We have to move on, really.
Okay, moving on. So then what happened? We'll look at pictures. So you know what? Since you saw the video, and I'm going to go to some imagery, and then you can ask me questions. So the picture here on the left is L.A., and on the right is New York. It's oriented like a map. So people might have some questions. I'll start with some things. First of all, we had the screens made at Stewart Film Screens in Hollywood. They were black screens. They were a black vinyl because we wanted to add contrast back to the washed out images from the rear projection into the windows. We didn't want to light the place, so we didn't draw people to the windows like moths to a flame. So we used military cameras by Kohu in San Diego, and we lit them with black boxes that emitted infrared, which the camera was sensitive to. So we lit the places without ambient light or visible light to the human eye, so that we didn't want to, make this look. Anyway, also we turned off the echo canceling circuit on the satellite, which was one of the hardest things we had to do, because using a commercial service like Western Union, they really didn't want to do that because they expected people to want to have a phone call and they didn't want the echo to happen. So that's back in the old days when your voice got chopped up when you were trying to talk to somebody through a satellite. So we turned that off, and behind each window there was an audio guy who was like a rodeo bonko roll rider who was riding a graphics equalizer and a comb filter and everything to sort of, as the crowd moved forward, the acoustics changed. The miking was a crossfire of shotgun microphones, and so the whole dynamics changed. You just do not see people talking in remote situations without being in headphones on TV and all this other kind of stuff, because audio is the black art of all of this technology. Anyway, we made it work, and occasionally it would howl, but we would have it under control. What else do we need to know? Yeah, we didn't tell anybody, but there were a few leaks because we didn't want a bunch of people showing up with champagne in one hand and a cake in the other, like a gallery opening. We hate galleries. We took our art out of the galleries because the art world's not big enough to hold the ideas and all this stuff. This is the window New York 4, which is not... Okay, that's what you were getting before we arrived in LA. So we thought it was funny. We didn't intend to do the Lincoln Center and shopping center. We were looking for seedy, out of the way, downtown LA kind of junk. But it turned out we ran into a friend. He did all the Live from Lincoln Center stuff for PBS. So we ended up hooking up a high culture place in New York with a shopping center in LA, which seemed very appropriate.
Is this behind the window?
That's Sherrie behind the window.
Okay.
Our friend Charlie Broyette was famous for showing up with too much equipment.
Yeah, a lot of equipment.
So people, this is out in front of LA, people had a genuine good time. It was not only the novelty, actually people have tried to do these things again and people just walk by and fall flat. Oh, I've made these 1950s sci-fi posters for all of our projects to give it that sort of, see, it says, no one knew it, but the sidewalks of New York and Los Angeles were about to merge. Woo! Oh, in Collaboravision.
Telecollaborative.
Telecollaborative.
All right.
Okay, oh yeah. And then there we were young. And there's my computer, 6 lines, 40 characters across. Boom.
Radio Shack
there
computer.
you go. With this technology, you made satellite links.
Yeah, it had, in 1984, the slow scan transmitters by Robot Research, also in San Diego, who built top quality crap. And we had the whole new thing. We had the latest thing. We had serial number 1 through 10. And it had an RS-232 port, and you could do image manipulation and all kinds of stuff.
You were talking about those picture phones, remember the black and white things?
Yeah, actually not those. In '84 we used a very multi-faceted, state-of-the-art ham image transmission.
Yeah, this was with Henry Dakin, remember?
Yeah, we got... there's Charlie. There's Sherrie. Yeah, you know what? When I come back live on camera, I've got one here and it's on. And I want to tell you about at the E-Cafe, we hooked those things up to mobile, to cell phones, and we were doing the mobile.
10 minutes.
Okay, there's Mark Shubin. Okay, we're going out of Hole in Space. Are there any questions?
Yeah. Are there any questions regarding Hole in Space?
Do we have any
room?
questions in the room?
No questions.
Perfect.
Actually, but then you mentioned now the E-Cafe, because we only have 10 minutes now. So can you elaborate on the E-Cafe?
Okay. All right, we went with community memory again. We went up and we talked to Lee, and they had a new iteration of community memory. They hadn't really released it yet. We were the first release. We said, listen, texting is fine, but the world, not everybody can type. We're setting up a multimedia telecollaborative environment. We need a computer system, and we need to hack some way together to allow people to store and then search for and retrieve their images. So the hack for this was to, Lee said, fine, okay. I mean, it took a while because the other people in his crew said, you want to send images over community memory? That's dealing with the devil. They wanted to stay with their nirvana of pure text. So there's the Plexus P35 Mini. Okay, and here is this kind of the setup. You can see the writing. You can see computer to memory on the right. Now there's a slow scan transmitter sitting on top. This is it. Do you see my cursor?
Yes.
No.
Can you tell us which year this was?
The Orwellian year of 1984. This was the Orwellian antidote.
Yeah. No internet cafes, no networks, no internet.
No, nothing. Nobody ever did that. No
nothing.
one's ever done anything like this. Even the industry. We set up a network. Oh yeah, this was designed within the limitations of the plain, ordinary telephone service, POTS. There were no data lines or anything. So there were modems. The terminals were not PCs or autonomous machines. They were terminals hooked up to the mini computer through a modem. There was a telewriter hooked up to a modem. The telewriter could write on the still video transmission. You could send writing. People could draw together. It was a French-made thing. We had to hack it so that it would genlock and work with our American equipment, but it was a very cool machine because it had a stylus on it. It actually wrote in ink what you were doing.
I saw a photo of Timothy Leary writing on it. Do I remember right?
Yeah, we'll get to that. It's right back here. Here was our first concept diagram.
Wow.
And so there was an optical recorder sitting next to the mini computer at control center. So people would send a still image or a drawing or the combination of the two to a receiver at that end. The Plexus P35 would instruct the optical disc recorder to record the image, assign it a frame number, and keep track, and a descriptor would be written so that in community memory, when you were searching it, it would tell you if, here's a poem about a tree. Do you want to see the picture with that tree? And if you hit yes, the Plexus would spin the disk up to that, load it into slow scan, send it back to you by slow scan. Under a minute, you had the picture, motherfucker. That's how cool it was. The first public dial-up storage and retrieval pictorial database, Daddy. Here's Charlie trying to fix that French telewriter.
And you teach other people to use this technology in other places.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we had this project went on for a year and a half. That's Tim.
There's Timothy Leary. By the way, Timothy Leary was giving a talk here in Berlin sometime, I think, in the 80s.
Let him finish.
And I go to the thing, and he ushers me backstage. And this was actually in East Berlin. This is like right after the wall opened up.
In 1990, we went to Art Futura in Barcelona, and we left the keys to the Electronic Café to Tim. And while we were doing our presentation on stage, then Tim comes up on the big screen behind us and freaks everybody out.
So in fact, this was a network cafe. One artist could sit in another city and collaborate with other people in your cafe, right?
Yeah, here they are. They were people did all kinds of stuff. There was a thing at the museum. People did. Is this too fast? Is it?
No, it's fine.
People are drawing together. They're making drawings. They're storing them. they're doing annotations, they're doing bubble text, Electronic Cafe, try it, you'll like it. Kids who are being encountered computers for the first time. This woman is Bukowski's, well, he doesn't say wife, but the poet. She was a resident poet at one of the cafes.
The poet.
Yeah. These are the faces.
There were also concerts, right?
There was music. There were people in Eastel, Los Angeles, which was Mexican-speaking. There was Koreatown, Korean-speaking. South Central, black and there was Venice Beach, which was like we say, it was like the canteen scene in the original Star Wars movie. You didn't know who was going to walk in there. And there were dinners, and the places were filled up, and this was up for 7 weeks. These are image transmissions. You can see the scale in which they're being constructed.
Printed out and then added together.
Yeah, transmitted, printed, and constructed.
Amazing.
And lots of kids involved. And
absolutely
so,
amazing.
And also the slow scan would send in quadrants, so you would get 4 pictures, and they would be like quick time lapse in a couple of seconds of each. And so this, and people were doing art, and at the end of the first week, everybody was doing things like, this is who we are, we be this is us, we have poets, we have artists, we have problems, we have politics. There were political meetings and stuff. And then at the end of the first week, people started talking. See, this is the thing about using different character sets. People would write recipes and translate them into different languages and home remedies and stuff like that. And then everybody would build their wall. The whole wall, the places were wallpapered, and when you walked in, there was this catalog of possibilities. 2, 3, 1.
2, 3, 1. Yeah, we have about 2 minutes.
Yeah, we got to bring in our next speaker, who is actually on a completely different. We have to bring in a new speaker.
But please, sorry.
I understand.
I think this is really the point to have applause to what this man has achieved. Isn't this amazing?
We haven't got to 10 years of the Electronic Café in Santa Monica.
Stand by, Kit,
I understand.
because we want you to stand by in the event that we have a problem bringing in this next guest, because we've got to come over to a completely different video conferencing system, because we're going to be bringing in Richard Stallman from the Free Software Foundation, and he will only use free software in his dictionary. So bear with us a few minutes, Kit, and we might bring you in on this a little bit later to continue with our
we try
discussion.
to connect now to...
yeah, we're going to try to connect to him right now.
I'll up and turn my speakers on so I'll hear your jingle if you call.
Yeah.
Okay.
But just... Will we call him back when we don't work it out with?
Yeah, we're going to call you back, Kid, if things don't work out, and you can continue. So we're standing by now on the Jitsi Bridge here, waiting for Richard Stallman.
Oh, we have to wait, and then something happens? Or?
Yeah, you can stay on this line, by the way. We got both video links connected up here, so there's no reason why we should even disconnect you, actually.
Video link?
Yeah, because we've got you on Skype, and we've got Richard Stallman on the Jitsi Bridge.
Could be problems with echoing, so we...
Yeah, we might have some, but we want to just be here in case Richard comes on.
And do we get a note at the Jitsi when he comes?
Oh yeah, it'll completely shift. You'll see it.
Okay.
I'm back.
Could you maybe send him an SMS message?
Well, we'll see him here when he shows up. Actually,
what is that? What have you there?
That's the black and white video phones from the late '80s.
Late '80s.
That's what Craig Larson was using, right?
Yeah, you know, we had these, we mailed these all over the world. We broke the embargo in Cuba. Omar Cabezas launched a cafe in Nicaragua. We had some software, some surveillance software made for these. You know, home arrest people would have to use these and call in and show that they're still there. Of course, they could have faked it. I never understood that. But anyway, we had a system where people could phone in and through their touch tone navigate a gallery and add their pictures to the gallery. And kids could send their pictures, and the software would screw around with their faces.
Yeah, it would have an RJ11 phone jack on it, which we just connected directly in parallel with your phone line. So what we would do is we would call from Henry Dakin's place. We would call into Luke Solas in Amsterdam on a long-distance call, and we had these video phones, and this was the very first Hectic conference. Oh. I believe this was in...
Video?
Yeah, no, we were using those little still phones.
Wow.
And we were doing this at the Hectic conference, and this was the very first conference. Yeah, go ahead.
And we would do our New Year's Eve around the world celebrations every year, where we would link up with every time zone around the world except for a couple, and until Hawaii, which was 3:30 a.m., who closed the thing down. And one New Year's Eve in 1990, you know where you were, Captain. You were sending us pictures from the Berlin Wall on New
Right,
Year's
I was standing on the Berlin Wall waving at the CNN cameras.
Yeah, yeah.
The interesting part about that, too, was Joseph Golden, the Russian guy, set up the space bridge with the US Festival, tying Moscow to Glen Ellen Park, where the bands were playing. Only certain selected people, of course, would be in there in that audience. And this was during the US Festival. And Joseph worked a lot in conjunction with Henry Dakin. And Henry Dakin would be picking up the Molniya satellite and recording.
He had a tracking dish because it was an elliptical.
Yeah, it was a polar orbit, right, exactly.
Follow the satellite.
Exactly. And then he would pick up the Molniya satellite, and then he would give the tapes to the Russian consulate, which is just a few blocks away from where he was at on Green Street in San Francisco.
So you could watch the soap operas.
Can you send Richard a message?
Right now.
Maybe on.
So those were the heady days
We don't have
of
any other
citizen
channel.
diplomacy.
We don't have any other channel.
So we would take these
We're not
phones
connected to
because they're 12 volts, and we'd.
Wait, here he comes.
Here he comes.
Hey, Richard Stallman, we are here.
Hi, can you hear us? Oh, wait.
Put on your
I can
headphones,
hear you.
Richard.
Can you hear us, Richard?
Yes, I hear you.